Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Robbins, and I am broadcasting here from the Temple of Silence in Luoma, Finland, substituting for my wife, Tuija Robbins, who usually does these broadcasts, but we have quite an extensive Initiation Mystery Week project going on here, so I'm glad to step in on her behalf. This is all part of the Ask program broadcast series. We have 5 broadcasts a week in general, and then at the time of the full moon, there are more. So we, on Wednesdays, work with the Triangles Project, which is so important to the Tibetan. I'll explain a little more about it, probably you know to a degree. Then we work with, on Thursdays, the Reappearance of the Christ. These are broadcasts, and we use always the same generic link for all of these, except for our Friday Dissipation of Glamour project, where you have, I think, received the webinar link. That's the only webinar in that series. So we'll be doing that on Friday, and then on Saturday we invoke the souls, or the soul of the nations, so important in bringing about the expression of the divine will through these great aggregates which we call nations. And then on Sunday we have our Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes meditation. This week, let's see, well, a little bit later today, at least on my today, here in Finland at 11 o'clock at night, I'll be doing the pre-full moon webinar in Leo and Aquarius, or not, I mean, excuse me, Leo and Sirius, the Sirius Leo full moon. And then tomorrow at approximately 10 o'clock, we will be doing the exact full moon meditation. The actual full moon is at 9:26 and 30 seconds a.m. in GMT time format, universal time. So here in Finland it's 12:26:30, and we'll be working a couple of hours ahead of that to prepare for this very important full moon, in which Sanat Kumara, it is said, recognizes the entire hierarchy. Well, this Triangle's work is close to the Tibetan's heart, he says. And he said something that is really imperative. He said, it must go on. Apparently, subjectively, it's so important that it will strengthen the expression and the power of the men and women of goodwill throughout the world, even though it's a entirely subjective process. We create the triangles of light, the triangles of goodwill, which is love in action, and eventually we do create the triangles of will, the will to good. Eventually that will be the case. And then we're told that this is really, in many ways, an emergency network if humanity ever really gets into difficulty, and of course the planet as a whole. The Buddhas of activity in Shambhala, a great triangle in itself, can utilize the triangles network to help offset the difficulties. Not that they are responsible, but in emergencies, Shambhala can be invoked, just as in the Second World War it was the case, where the Lords of Liberation issued forth and in fact turned the tide of that great conflict between the Great White Lodge and the Lords of Materialism. So the work we're doing here with triangles is very, very important. And I hope all of you have at least one triangle and are working with more as you find people that are interested in this type of work. It's The work is simple in some ways and very, very deep. You basically find two other people and you visualize them as soul-infused personalities, and you circulate the energy of light, spiritual light and goodwill within the triangle. And you can visualize in the center of the triangle perhaps the Master or perhaps the Christ, a great central energy, and then you holding that image or the images of the many triangles you may be involved with and relating those triangles to the great network, you sound the great invocation. So that is the work that's done daily, and it is essential. Well, let us then begin by sounding the Om 3 times. And as soul-infused personalities, increasingly so, linked with each other, helping to transform the etheric network of squares that characterizes our planet into an etheric network of triangles, we visualize this golden network covering the entire planet. According to the depth of feeling with which we form our triangles and the strength of will behind our visualization, so will be the effectiveness of this work. So as we begin to think of our triangles, the triangles we're involved with, it's not just an automatic process. When you do this work, even if it just takes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you really put your consciousness into it. So that's what we do now. We visualize, we focus on our triangle or triangles, and visualize those who are involved, calling them by name, triangle after triangle, calling them by name, and seeing them in triangular relationship with ourself. This at first. and our relationship with each other in our own little network, even if it only consists of one triangle, is a loving and lighted relationship between people in whom the soul is increasingly expressing. So as we work together, we are invoking each other, invoking the best from each other. It's not a personal relationship at all, really. It's something higher, using the personality as an instrument. So love and goodwill are passing between the members of our triangle of triangles, and we try to feel this energy, at first in our own little network. And spiritual light is illuminating our network of triangles. Spiritual light, the light of the soul. The soul is light. We are told spiritual light illuminating these triangles. And by an act of the creative imagination, we link up our increasingly loving, increasingly lighted triangles with the great triangles network. We should really be able to feel etherically this network actually in the etheric body of the planet. It's a great redemptive work in which we are participating. And we try to understand that this network arises, as it were, all the way into Shambhala, where the three Buddhas of activity can become aware of it and utilize it as an instrument for their work of helping to carry out the will of the king of Sanat Kumara. So it rises into very high places and is very esoteric work. These great beings are, if we could but realize it, trying to keep things in proportion, so great that they were planetary logoi in the previous solar system. This is what the Tibetan tells us, and they are working under the law of sacrifice, assisting Sanat Kumara in his planetary project. So this is extremely occult work, however simple it may seem. And if you dedicate your creative imagination to this kind of work, you can be, along with your brothers and sisters, very effective in helping to transform the quality of energy which is reaching the dense physical body of our planetary logos, and the lower 18 subplanes will be changed because of this work. So now, visualizing our own little network and the way it interfaces with the great network of triangles, we use our relationships in the light, in goodwill, and even in the will to good. We use our relationships to sound that word of power which was released to humanity when the Christ made his decision to return in physical form for some 2,000 to 2,500 years to assist the transition into the Aquarian Age and to assist humanity's entry into the fifth kingdom, at least a certain designated proportion of human beings. So we will sound together, pausing after the verses, we will sound the great invocation, visualizing, as we do, our triangles and the triangles network. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Once again, we visualize this ever-strengthening, ever-brightening network covering the entire planet etherically. And we visualize what it might be like if 100,000 triangles actually were functioning and existed. There's this old story about Alice Bailey telling a co-worker that the Tibetan informed her that if 100,000 triangles could be formed, we could turn around the difficult world situation and really make it a more spiritual expression of humanity. Just imagine this network really growing, really effective, really powerful. And let this network become, shall we say, a reality in our lives, something technically substantial, underlying this world of outer effects that we call the dense physical plane. This is something we can do, and of course it will help dispel the glamour and illusion and rid the world of chaotic Maya. We need to work persistently, daily, in this manner, because, as we might visualize, one day the earth will be outwardly the sacred planet that it is now. The Tibetan tells us inwardly. A sacred planet representing the base of the spine center of our solar logos. And when we work in the triangles like this, we are moving toward the day when that sacredness will be manifest. And in the more short term, we are preparing the way for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. So sustaining the visualized circulation of love and goodwill, of light, and of the power of the will to good, we sound the Om 3 times. So friends, this is powerful, simple, deep work during these 9 years that remain in the era of the Forerunner before the great hierarchical conclave in 2025. We have lots of work to do to help change the consciousness of humanity, which will of course work out in correct action on the physical plane. It all starts with consciousness, and we are working subjectively, behind the scenes, but powerfully, to change the consciousness. So, do engage in the Triangle's work. Let it be spread far and wide. It will only take you a few minutes a day, and find those people with whom you can cooperate in helping to transform our etheric planetary network from squares into triangles, and thus help us and all the light workers of the world dissipate, or disperse the Maya, dissipate the glamour, dispel the illusion. And one final Om before we end this little reflection. And remember, tonight, if you wish, at 8 o'clock p.m., the in Universal Time, GMT, the pre-Leo-Sirius full moon, and then tomorrow morning, it's more like 7 o'clock a.m. GMT, we will be preparing and working for the actual exact moment, full moon, which occurs GMT at 9:26 and 30 seconds in the morning. So, with gratitude for your attendance and your work, and one final Om, and then we will conclude our work. Om.